Last week, it spent all night talking about where Pakistan went wrong at the World Cup. But in summary, what was their problems? What were the issues?
Well, I thought they sort of batted pretty much how I thought they would. I thought Fakhar Zaman's lack of form and drop of form before the tournament. He had 11 games where I don't think he got over 20 or 30 or something. And I think almost they had to leave him out. But you could see when he came back in, he gave them that dynamic batting option. Get some above par scores, and the 2 or 3 innings he played when he came back in sort of made you realise, wow, what a player this lad is. And what, a little bit like your star, like your Maxwells or whoever, they may not come off all the time, but when they do come off, they win you games. Simple as that. And whether they could have, just for that reason, stuck with him at the start of the World Cup, that's a bit of hindsight in there, because he had a barren spell leading into the tournament. But I actually think the batting was just okay. It was fine. It was fine. What was really disappointing for me was the bowling. 2 months before the tournament, or leading into the tournament, I know India went past them, but they were ranked the number 1 side. That bowling unit of Shaheen and Haris Rauf and Nazim Shah, it just took one injury to Nazim Shah, and then from being one of the most dynamic bowling outfits to suddenly, Haris Rauf was proving expensive at the start of the tournament. Shaheen wasn't getting the ball to swing with a new ball, wasn't taking new ball wickets. And then the real complexity and the real issue in the middle overs spin and the lack of wicket taking and even economy of spinners. For a country that has had, my first game against Pakistan in the Nehru Cup in '89, I was bamboozled by Abdul Qadir, Saqlain Mushtaq Ahmed, Shahid Afridi, some of the great spinners. It is a concern that Pakistan's spin resources are, they're where they're at the moment. And that's something that I think, in domestic cricket in Pakistan, they need to focus in on getting back to where they were with their mystery spin and their wrist spin and their attacking spin options in those middle overs.
After the World Cup, Nas, all hell broke loose at the Pakistan Cricket Board, as expected, really. Yeah, and Babar Azam was offered just the Test captaincy and told to give up the ODI and T20 captaincy. He resigned from all 3. What did you make of that decision of Babar's to resign as captain?
Yeah, listen, I don't know the ins and outs in Pakistan cricket and the politics and everything behind the scenes. There was things that were going on throughout the tournament that you could see on social media. It's not helpful in a tournament. For me, stability is, especially with a side like Pakistan, behind the scenes, if you can have stability and calmness, I think that allows players to flourish and thrive. And for a large period, I think that's what Babar had, when we went out there for the Pakistan Test Series. Before that, the way they played in the World T20 in Australia, they seem to have behind the scenes a real calmness and long-term planning. And I think probably it was probably a time for a change, just for Babar's sake, really. He is still Pakistan's best batter, and you see, with Kohli, and you see with Root, and, sometimes it can just be all-encompassing. It takes over your whole life, and it starts to sort of filter into your own game and your own life. So just for Babar's sake, I think it's probably the right thing to do, to go in a fresh direction as far as the captaincy goes. Shan Masood, I've always thought, is a very bright, intelligent cricketer. I've always listened to him and liked interviewing him. And you interview people and you think, this bloke talks a lot of sense. I've always thought that with Shan. So hopefully he can take that side on. But I keep repeating, for me personally, I think you need a consistency and a calmness behind the scenes above working with the team. Dynamic captain and a dynamic team. There's such a talented bunch still. You only have to watch the footage of them now on Twitter. People are tweeting footage of their practice, and you see the talent that they've got. And there's immense talent. It's just harnessing that talent and making them into a side. There's a World T20 coming up in June. There's still a top T20 side. They were in the final against England last time, and they still have quality players. I just hope Babar goes back to getting a whole shed load of runs, really. That would be the best thing I've always said about people like Babar Azam and Joe Root, the thing that's most important is their runs. The captaincy was, decent. I always felt Babar is a decent captain, a good guy. But what is his most important contribution to Pakistan at the moment? It's just a shed load of runs. And if he can do that, then they will be a better side. So I hope Babar does that for Pakistan.
He seemed to be a little bit weighed down by the burden of captaincy at times, Nasser. I mean, do you think the weight of captaincy coming off him now might actually improve his batting and make him an even better batter?
Yeah, I didn't see it in his batting. He obviously had an okay World Cup. He didn't have a great World Cup. He wasn't. It makes it harder when you see Kohli and Rohit playing the way they were, and he's just doing fine. He struggled at times against spin, and only Babar knows if the captaincy was weighing. Whenever I saw him, at the toss, and I chatted with him a couple of times, and he always comes over for a chat, and he's very likable, very pleasant. So when I see him, he doesn't. Times when we saw Joe Root towards the end of his captaincy, Joe did look like a man that captaincy had weighed heavily on him, and he was having to do thing for the team and during COVID times or whatever. I personally didn't see that with Babar when I saw him in and around a game of cricket, but only he knows. It must be such a difficult job with all the expectation of being Pakistan captain in a World Cup and the history. Only he knows whether that has affected his batting. It didn't fall off a cliff. His batting, it's been fine. But Pakistan needed to be, what it was a year ago and been better than fine, really, been the world-class player. And then if he does that, he will carry others with him. He'll carry Rizwan and he'll carry the batting lineup with him. I thought Abdullah Shafiq at times looked like a real class player that should be persevered with. Shan Masood himself, I think, could be an excellent red ball player for years to come, especially the captaincy might lift him. So they are areas that, but the big area for me is it shouldn't be such a drop-off when one seamer gets injured, Nazim Shah. It went from the best bowling attack in the tournament to, going round the park all the time. And the other thing is those middle overs and quality spin and wrist spin. That would be the areas I would highlight looking forward to. And I said it before the tournament. We did a preview show at Lord's, and I said, Shadab isn't bowling particularly well, and who's going to bowl spin for, I could see it before the tournament. In a tournament in India, even though it didn't spin big, you're still going to need quality spin. So that's an area of concern for me. Babar Azam will end up being one of Pakistan's all-time great batters. That goes without saying.
Australia versus Pakistan Test series is coming up. Pakistan have a horrible record in Australia. Any predictions? Are Pakistan going to win a Test?
I'm really just trying to get over jet lag at the moment. Australia, as England have found for a very long time, is a very difficult place to go and win. So you'd say Australia are favourites. I mean, look at the cricket they played. World Test champions, Ashes retained, 50-over World Cup. They'll be a difficult side to beat. Generally in Australia, you need your pace batters to go big, so not sort of pretty 40s and 50s that get you to 250, and then Australia will get 400 and you're chasing the game. So you need big hundreds and 150s. That's what when England did win down there with Strauss and that batting lineup. Strauss, Trott, Peterson, Cook all got massive runs, and pace bowling. You need Pakistan's pace bowling in Australia needs to fire. So Australia are favourites, but Pakistan are always a joy to watch. If I can watch it here in the UK, I will be.
So on the topic of international cricket versus T20 leagues, we've seen Joe Root and Ben Stokes recently turn down the opportunity to play in the IPL, whereas Pakistani players like Imad Wasim and Haris Rauf have prioritised T20 leagues over international cricket. Do you think there's a danger that some countries' players are going to be in a situation where they are going to be prioritising T20 leagues over international cricket?
Yeah, I think already it's happening already all around the world, really. You see that with South African cricketers, you see it with South England cricketers, you've seen it with Pakistan cricketers. So New Zealand, obviously Trent Bolt, but then he came back. He decided not to take central contract. So it's already happened, and it's not a level playing field. So what I don't do is judge any cricketer at all, because it's their job, it's their, whatever people say. You can listen to the old fuddy-duddies, if they don't want to play for England, get rid of them. Or if they don't want to play for Pakistan, get rid of them. Those days have gone, because it is lucrative, it is your job, it is your career. Harris Ralph or whoever could fall over tomorrow and their career could end. And, no one's coming back to them and saying, oh, here's X amount of money to look after you, whatever. That's it, your career ends. So I don't have any problem with that. It helps you as a cricketer. It makes you, that Morgan side that won the World Cup, part of that was based on the fact that they'd all gone off and played a lot of franchise cricket, and it made the likes of Bairstow and Stokes himself, Butler, Curran, it made them better cricketers. So, and the other thing is, if you take them on, look what's happened to the West Indies. They tried to go the other way and go, no, if you don't want to play for the West Indies, we're going to cast you aside. And then you're, shooting yourself in the foot. They never put out their best side ever, rightly or wrongly. They just didn't. And in the end, they don't even end up making a World Cup because a lot of their players aren't playing for the West Indies for whatever reason. So the days of taking them on, like England did with Kevin Peterson or whatever, I think those days are gone. I think New Zealand do it pretty well. So what they do is that they work with their cricketers and understand. And I think Key's trying to do that in England. I think Pakistan have got to do this as well. They've got to understand that it is complex, that you can't just say, oh, that's it, off you go, and we won't pick you. And you can't go the other way as well. You can't just, if you sign a central contract, you are signing a contract, but work with players. And players, if you give them a bit of leeway and give them that, back them a little bit, they will come back to you and perform when you need them to. So it's a complex issue, but I think nearly every country is going through that at the moment. But the thing you have to be careful with is, as I keep saying, with Nazim Shah or Shane Shah Afridi, fast bowlers are like gold dust and they get injured. So be careful. Look at what's happened to poor old Jofra, Mark Wood. He wasn't quite there for the World Cup because he'd come into it with that bruised heel and he couldn't play catch-up cricket. Fast bowlers are like gold dust. Be very careful if you're sending them off to, franchise tournaments left, right and centre. They do need looking after, but they are also much sought after.
Nas, much appreciated. Thank you very much for your time. It's always great to hear your views on the world of cricket.
Anytime, Saj.